Alright, in today's video we'll be looking at our 2015 Mercedes-Benz C-Class and listing 5 top things that I really hate about this car. But to be honest, I actually love this car a lot more than I hate these things. These things are actually, it took me quite a while to actually come up with this list. So some of them will sound pretty insignificant, and that's because they kind of are, but if I had to make a list, these would be the top 5 things. So the first thing is to do with the build quality of this car. There's just some weird things that you just wouldn't expect in a Mercedes like this, and the first one, for example, is the LED lights that are in these door handles. Now, all 4 obviously handles have little LEDs in them, but they have 3 out of the 4 have failed. In my previous C-Class, 2 out of the 4 had failed. It's a really common issue, and it's just an LED. How can LEDs in this day and age be that unreliable? They're incredibly reliable, but for some reason in here they fail. And the design of how the LEDs are installed into the door cards and all that is just crazily over-engineered. So it's not a simple, just pull the bulb out, put a new one in. It's actually quite a complicated thing to take the door card off, and I've done it before with many other cars, putting in speakers and all that, but in this it just seems to be just that much harder just to change a simple LED. Now if we go inside, you'll see here another really common issue is to do with these seat back pockets, which start to droop. You can see here the elastic gets loose, and so you can see I've cable tied these to pull them up, otherwise they are drooping like way down here. Massively common issue, and again it's just kind of over engineered. Just to simply tighten these or replace these straps, you have to take the whole seat out, pull apart the back part of the seat, and the job is so big that it ends up even being cheaper to just buy a whole new brand seat from Mercedes. I've never had this problem with any other car because it's just a back seat pocket. It shouldn't be this complicated. So that's another example, and one last example to show you is to do with this here as well. Another common issue, the fuse box cover in the front here, if I can find it. This thing is so loose, and you can see I've had to use super glue to keep this thing from falling off. If you just touch it, or if you sneeze or if you fart, this thing just goes flying off, and so I've had to use super glue to put it back on. So again, another really stupid just build quality issue that you should not really get with a Mercedes like this. The next thing that I hate about this car is the fact that there is no next track or previous track buttons on the steering wheel, and kind of down here. There is actually one down here. But anyway, let's start with the steering wheel. The only way to change the song on the steering wheel is you've got to make sure you go here and go to the media page, and then you can use these up and down buttons to change the track, you see? But unless you're not on that page, unless you are on that page, you can't. Now down here, we have a button over here which I can press, and that will bring up a little menu here with the music, and then I can use my scroll wheel to go forward or backwards to change song. So that's quite a bit of a process just to change the song. Now some cars actually do have this as a next track button, but not all of them do. The other option, of course, is to go to the media page over here, and then I can just use the forward and back buttons to change the song. But just really weird that this car is crazy, impressive with all its features and all of that, and yet it does not have a full, next track and previous track button on the steering wheel. Yeah, just is a bit annoying. The next thing that I had about this car is to do with the climate control switches. Now, they actually look really nice, they feel really nice, there's some nice knurling on top of the switches, so that's cool and all. But the problem is that they all have the exact same shape and size, which means you need to look down here to change certain things. Now temperature isn't so bad, it's on the ends, so you can easily feel that, right? But the fan speed is there, and then the air distribution is there. It's nestled in with a bunch of other buttons, and yet you use them quite frequently. Older cars have the good old 3 dials, fan speed, temperature, and air distribution, and even that is a lot more practical than this setup here. However though, I would much rather have these physical buttons than the newer C-Class that is all fully touchscreen and all that. I do prefer to use those. My second kind of gripe with the HVAC switches is the fact that there's actually no dedicated screen down here. So a lot of modern cars these days, they will have some small little screens down here so you can always see your temperature, fan speed and air distribution. Now you can see it on the screen over here, so it is kind of there. So I drew this image up real quickly just to show you how I think the spacing, placement and different types of switchgear could have been easily improved. So you got your temperature dials here on each side. You've got the inboard buttons, which are your fan speed, and then your outboard buttons, which is your air distribution. And you can easily manipulate these buttons here without having to actually look at them. Then of course on the inside, you've got your sort of less frequently used buttons. You've got your demisting buttons there on the left, and then on the right, your other switches there as well. And then of course, I've also incorporated these little screens here. So that way, again, you can turn the screen off, or if the screen fails or whatever, as in the infotainment screen, you can still see your HVAC settings down here as well. So again, it's not the biggest problem in the world, but I just think, you know, these slight tweaks could have made a massive difference to how you use the HVAC controls. So the next thing that I hate about this car is to do with the back seats, and this might just be applicable to me. And again, I am being a little bit picky here, so just go easy. But it's to do with the positioning of the back seats. So first of all, the room here is great. Headroom is great, leg room is great, footroom is great. But for some reason, particularly on road trips, I love taking this car on a road trip if I'm driving. But if I'm sitting in the back seat in a road trip and I'm trying to rest, I find the headrest is just too far back, and the recline angle of the seat, it just, you kind of sit like this. And I don't have this issue in pretty much every other car that I've driven in. Sitting in the back seat's fine, and you can move the headrest, or it's a bit bigger, and I can find myself being fairly comfortable, as much as you can be in a back seat of a car on a long road trip. But in this car, for just some reason, I could never find the right position. Even if I move the headrest, it's just doesn't really do much. So it kind of reminds you of those cars which had no headrests back in the 70s, and you'd just be like that. So yeah, maybe it's just me, but the whole car is, the rest of the car is really comfortable, but just, yeah, I don't know why, but these back seats just can't seem to get a comfortable position. And now the last thing that I hate about this car is to do with the drive modes, which Mercedes calls Agility Select. So obviously here, I can toggle through the different driving modes. I've got my Eco, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, and Individual. But the problem is that the Sport modes in this car, I find, are just really too aggressive for daily driving. And again, I drove a BMW 3 Series recently and a 1 Series recently, my Lexus cars that I've had before, I would pretty much always drive in the Sport modes because it just felt more fun and fast and more responsive. But in this, the main issue I have is that the transmission just holds the gears for too long. So in the Beamer that I drove recently, I'd put it in Sport mode. Yes, it would hold the gears for a little bit longer. That's what is supposed to happen in a Sport mode. But it's still kind of smart, and it knows that if I'm going along windy roads and I'm downshifting heaps and I'm braking and accelerating hard, it will hold the gears on for a bit longer. But if I'm driving around town and on the motorway, it knows that I'm not driving it that hard, and it will still shift gears a bit earlier, and when I'm cruising, it's going to go to the highest gear. Whereas in this, again, even if you're driving slowly or quickly or whatever, in Sport mode, it just holds the gears for just way too long. And even when you're cruising on the motorway, it will not cruise in the highest gear. Now, one thing I do to sort of trick it a little bit is I put it into cruise control, and then it will go into the highest gear. But many times I'm driving along and it's in 5th gear or 6th gear rather than the 7th or 6th gear. And it's not all the time, sometimes it's okay, but it just isn't as, I guess, smart or as enjoyable or as comfortable as Sport modes in other cars that I've driven. And that means I end up just driving the car in Comfort mode for that reason. And it means it doesn't feel as responsive and as fun as it could be if it was in sport mode. Now, you can obviously go here and go into your individual driving mode, and you can customize it. In most cars, you could say, I want to have the sporty throttle response, but I want a more chilled out transmission shifting pattern. Yet in here, in Mercedes, in this C-Class, they have combined both the transmission and the throttle response in the same mode. So you cannot choose sporty throttle response and comfort transmission patterns, shifting patterns. So that doesn't help you either. So because of that, I end up driving it in comfort mode or maybe in manual mode, and I'll shift myself. But the sport mode I very seldomly use. I think if they wanted to make it like, aggressive like that, then Sport Plus should be the real hardcore one, but Sport should just be a funner, faster version of the comfort mode. So there you go. But anyway, that closes off the 5 things that I hate about this car. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's so much more that I love about this car. In fact, I've been trying to make a list of things that I love, and the list is just way too big. I really do believe objectively in this car class with its competitors. This does so many things really, really well and better than its competitors. So that video will come in due course. But if I had to pick those top 5 things, those would be it. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.